They said no human could ever slip past the border fleets, yet one person had done it so many times that the entire Orion Directorate treated his name like a warning. He wasn't a ghost, but close enough that frightened officers whispered about him as if saying too much might summon him. And when a single human became enough of a problem that 500 warships were deployed to hunt him down, the galaxy realized that the forgotten champion of Earth wasn't done fighting. He had simply been waiting for the right moment to return. It started on a quiet trade moon where no one expected trouble. Merchants were unpacking crates, children were running between booths, and the air was filled with the smell of heated metal and street food. Then the alarms hit sharp, blaring, rolling across the settlements like thunder. People looked up to see the shadows of massive warships blotting out the sky. The Directorate didn't send that kind of force unless someone truly dangerous had been spotted. But the rumors spreading across the crowd weren't about a monster or a terrorist. They all repeated the same thing. They found him. The human who survived the frontier wars. Most people in the galaxy had forgotten Earth, forgotten the old battles, forgotten the humans who once stood against impossible odds. But he remembered everything. He remembered the day humanity was pushed out, when countless worlds fell and his own unit was wiped out. He remembered the quiet promise he made to himself as he drifted in a damaged escape pod. He would not disappear. He would not surrender. If the galaxy had forgotten the strength of humanity, he would remind them. For years he worked from the shadows. One sabotage mission here, one rescued colony there. Never enough for the Directorate to confirm his location, but always enough to bother them. Enough to make them wonder why one human could do what entire fleets struggled to accomplish. Each victory left a trail of questions instead of answers, and every unanswered question made the hunters more desperate. The Directorate held full control of the major routes, so they believed they could trap him easily. They shut down exits from the moon. They jammed communications. They sealed the ports and warned every ship in orbit to prepare for capture operations. The entire planet trembled beneath the heavy hum of war engines powering up. The order was clear: find the human and end the legend. Across the market, a traveler in a worn jacket lifted his head. He listened to the alarms with the calm patience of someone who had heard them too many times before. His face was unremarkable, the kind people forgot as soon as they walked away. But his eyes held the sharp focus of someone who had spent too long surviving on instinct. He knew the Directorate wouldn't stop. Not after the outposts he had saved. Not after the hidden supply lines he had exposed. Not after the recruits he had helped escape before they were sent into forced service. Every step he took toward freedom reminded the galaxy of a truth the Directorate wanted erased, that humans fought back, even when alone. Instead of running toward the shelters like the nervous crowd, he moved through the chaos with quiet purpose. He was not afraid of the warships gathering overhead. He had slipped past worse. He had faced entire battalions with nothing but a stolen rifle and pure determination. What worried him wasn't being caught, it was what the Directorate planned to do once they realized he wasn't just a survivor. He was the last living fighter from a unit they had once feared. A unit that had shaken their confidence during the frontier conflict. A unit whose records had been wiped, but whose existence lingered in the nightmares of old commanders. The forgotten champion's path had led him here for a reason. Somewhere on this moon, hidden in the containers of refugees and traders, was a message he had been waiting for, something important enough that the Directorate wanted it destroyed. He didn't know who sent it. He didn't know why it was addressed to him. But he felt the weight of it pulling him forward, like a final call he could no longer ignore. Above him, the sky split with bright engines as hundreds of warships shifted into attack formation. The ground shook, civilians ran for cover, officers barked orders. Every scanner was locked on the city center. Someone shouted that the target had been located. He didn't change his pace. He just stepped into the open street, the warships looming overhead like giants preparing to crush him. And for the first time, the hunters and the hunted were face to face. But before the Directorate could strike, the air crackled with a strange pulse, something powerful enough to momentarily blind even military sensors. Every warship froze in confusion. Every officer hesitated, and in the sudden silence he realized the message he had come for was finally arriving. He looked up. and everything above him began to change. The pulse in the sky didn't fade, it grew. It rippled through the air like a silent wave, bending light and making the outlines of the warships blur for a moment. People around him stopped running and stared upward, confused and frightened. Even the director officers, usually rigid and confident, looked uncertain. No one had ever seen a disruption strong enough to stall an entire fleet. It wasn't a weapon, at least not any weapon the directorate admitted existed. It felt more like a signal. He watched the sky with a strange sense of familiarity, as if he had seen something like this long ago. But the memory stayed just out of reach, the forgotten message he was here to recover. Maybe this was connected to it. Maybe someone had planned this moment long before he arrived. That idea unsettled him more than the 500 warships waiting to strike. Before the pulse hit, he believed he was acting alone. He always had. His missions were planned by instinct, not orders. He trusted no one. But now, with that shimmering wave rolling over the sky, he realized he might not be the only one fighting back. Somewhere in the shadows of the galaxy, someone else was moving pieces he didn't even know existed, and they were using a signal strong enough to shake military scanners. The crowd around him began to whisper again. Some said the pulse was a natural storm. Others claimed it was a pirate trick. A few dared to suggest it was the forgotten champion himself causing it. He ignored the rumors, focused instead on the subtle shift in the air. The hum of the warships changed, almost like they had adjusted formation without orders. He could sense the tension inside every cockpit above him, pilots waiting for clarity they weren't getting. He moved through the unsettled crowd, heading for the shipping platforms near the center of the city. That was where the message should be. A crate marked with an old Earth symbol, something simple enough to overlook but meaningful to anyone who still remembered the old alliances. He wondered who had placed it there. No one from his past was alive. At least that's what he had been told, but if someone had survived, if someone had kept fighting in silence, that would explain the feeling in his chest now, a mix of hope and dread. The shipping lanes were quieter than the marketplace. The pulse had disrupted loading systems, leaving cranes frozen mid-motion and containers glowing with flickering status lights. Workers were hiding behind towers of freight, listening to the rumble of the warships overhead. He walked past them without drawing attention. They were too distracted to notice him, and he preferred it that way. He found the container row he had been searching for. Row 33, column 7. A small white tag hung from the latch, almost hidden under the dust. It carried the symbol he recognized, an old Earth formation mark used before the Frontier War. A symbol that shouldn't exist anymore. He reached for the latch but stopped when the ground shook again. The warships above were tightening formation. Someone must have realized the pulse wasn't a natural disruption. The Directorate never liked uncertainty. When they couldn't explain something, they usually attacked first and sorted the details later. He didn't have much time. He opened the crate. Inside, there wasn't a weapon, no secret tech, no advanced device. Just a small metal tablet, its surface scratched and worn from travel. It looked like it belonged to a forgotten age. When he touched it, the tablet lit up with faint blue patterns, Earth patterns, coded in a style that had been abandoned long before the war ended. A voice, distorted by age and static, played from the device. If you're hearing this, it means the final phase is starting, and you're the only one left who can finish it. He froze. The voice wasn't familiar, but the tone was, steady, certain, the tone of someone who believed in a mission so deeply that even time couldn't break it. No one spoke like that anymore, not in this galaxy. The message continued, breaking slightly as if damaged. The Directorate thinks they erased us. They think they ended the program, but they failed. There were survivors, and we've been waiting for you. He felt the weight of those words slam into him harder than the pulse in the sky. Survivors, plural, if that was true. Everything he believed about his past, his unit, his mission, it all shifted. The message cut out before it reached its end. The tablet dimmed, its power fading. He tried tapping it again, but it only flickered weakly. Whatever came next was missing. The message had been damaged on purpose or by time. He couldn't tell which. Above him, the warships began lowering altitude. Engines roared, lights sharpened. The Directorate was preparing to strike. Civilians were screaming again, scattering in every direction. But he stood still, holding the fading tablet, trying to understand what it meant. Someone had survived. Someone had known he would return. Someone had sent him a message on a pulse strong enough to freeze a fleet. The forgotten champion's path wasn't a lonely one after all. But before he could plan his next move, a new sound cut through the chaos, a deep mechanical rumble from somewhere beyond the hills. It wasn't a Directorate engine. It wasn't a civilian transport. It was something older, something hidden, something rising. And when the shadow of it stretched across the city, he realized the real hunt had only just begun. The shadow crossing over the city stretched wider than any ship the people had ever seen. Even the Directorate fleet paused as it appeared above the distant ridge, blocking part of the sky with its massive, unfamiliar shape. The air around it vibrated with a slow, steady hum, as if something ancient had awakened from a long sleep. The forgotten champion watched it rise, gripping the fading Earth tablet tightly. Whatever that machine was, it had not been built by the Directorate. It didn't match any warship design used in the frontier or the later peace era. It felt older, almost ceremonial, like it came from a time when humanity still held power across the stars. The Directorate ships didn't understand the threat at first. They changed formation again, trying to identify the object. Lights scanned the sky. Orders were shouted through open comms. Civilians ducked behind debris as the giant shape drifted forward, slow but purposeful. The forgotten champion could see the hesitation in the fleet's movements. They were used to dominating every battlefield, confident that nothing could challenge them. But this machine, whatever it was, did not react to their presence. It didn't turn its weapons on them, it didn't retreat. It simply moved into position like it already belonged there. He stepped back into the shadows behind the crates, keeping his eyes fixed on the rising object. A part of him believed it was connected to the message he had received. The tablet, the pulse, the old Earth symbol, it was too much to be coincidence. But another part of him wondered just how much of his past had been hidden. If there were survivors from the old unit, then they had been hiding for years. They had avoided detection by the most advanced surveillance systems in the galaxy. And now something massive, something that shouldn't even exist, was revealing itself in front of an entire Directorate fleet. If they were trying to help him, they were taking a huge risk. One of the smaller Directorate ships broke formation and launched toward the object. Its engines flared, and the sharp whistle of its acceleration echoed across the city. It was a scout vessel meant to analyze unknown threats. A calm voice from one of the command ships ordered it to scan the object immediately. But before the scout could get close, a pulse of soft blue light rippled from the mysterious machine. It wasn't violent. It wasn't explosive. It was almost gentle, like a wave of energy brushing the air. Yet the scout ship froze mid-flight, engines dimming, lights flickering. Then it drifted like a dead leaf, powerless, until one of the larger ships caught it with a tractor beam. The fleet erupted in panic. More orders, more alarms, more adjustments to attack positions. The forgotten champion slipped between containers, searching for a vantage point. He needed a way out, but he also needed answers. The message on the tablet wasn't complete, and the object in the sky wasn't here by accident. Someone wanted him to see it. Someone wanted him to understand its purpose. But the Directorate was closing in fast. Troops on the ground were flooding into the shipping lanes. They moved in tight formation, scanning every corner. He could hear their boots pounding on metal walkways, hear their radios buzzing as they coordinated a sweep. They weren't taking chances anymore. 500 warships didn't deploy to search, they deployed to capture. He ducked behind a stack of engine parts, listening as two officers passed nearby. Their conversation was tense, rushed. The target is still in this sector. Forget the civilians, we cannot lose him. And that unknown object? Command said to focus on the human. The object will be dealt with once he's secured. Their voices faded as they marched deeper into the lanes. He tightened his grip on the tablet. They still saw him as the main threat, even with the enormous machine in the sky. That meant his past still terrified them. Something about his mission, his unit, or his survival was more dangerous than any new technology. The Directorate's fear made the air feel heavier. He moved deeper into the maze of crates, looking for an exit route, but the mysterious machine shifted again. It let out another low hum, even deeper this time. The sound rolled across the city like the echo of distant thunder. Lights along its hull flickered in a pattern he recognized, even though he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. A memory tried to surface, a cold training room, blue lights on the wall, someone's voice telling him to watch, to learn, to survive. But the details slipped away before he could hold on to them. Then suddenly the machine released a beam of pale light that stretched down toward the surface, not toward the fleet, not toward the city, but toward him. It found him. It marked him. And every warship above saw it happen. The entire fleet roared to life, troops shouted. Engines screamed, lights locked onto the spot where he stood. The peaceful hum of the mysterious machine vanished as the sky erupted into chaos. He ran because he had no choice. He didn't know what the beam meant. He didn't know if the machine was calling him or trapping him. But now the Directorate wasn't just hunting a human survivor. They believed they had found the key to whatever mystery was unfolding in the sky, and they were willing to burn the entire moon to get him. Behind him, the ground shook as something broke through the clouds above, another unknown signal firing across the fleet. The first machine was not alone, and the forgotten champion realized he had stepped into a conflict far bigger than he ever imagined, one that had been waiting years for this exact moment to begin. The second object tore through the clouds like a dark comet, its silhouette jagged and unfamiliar, moving with a speed that didn't match its massive size. The moment it appeared, the entire Directorate fleet lost formation again. Alarms blared across every warship. Even from the ground, he could hear the sharp distortion of confused chatter echoing through their open coms. No one had expected one ancient machine to rise, let alone two. He darted between the crates as the ground shuddered under his boots. The pale beam from the first machine still tracked him, always following his movements, never wavering. It wasn't hot or painful, it didn't feel like a weapon. It felt more like recognition, like a spotlight that had finally found what it had been searching for. But the second object did not behave the same way. Its hull flickered with deep red lights that pulsed like a heartbeat, growing faster as it approached the city. As he slipped behind a row of empty cargo pods, he stole a glance upward. The first machine hovered calmly, as steady as a monument, its soft blue lights swirling in careful patterns. The second machine, however, moved like it was alive, darting, turning, scanning, almost as if hunting. The contrast between them made his chest tighten. It felt like witnessing two sides of the same forgotten past, two pieces of a story he once belonged to but could no longer remember. The Directorate finally opened fire. The sky erupted with streaks of bright energy as dozens of warships launched coordinated volleys toward the second object. The beams hit its hull, scattering harmlessly like sparks against a shield he couldn't see. The machine responded with a surge of red light, and a wave of electromagnetic force rippled outward. 3 warships instantly powered down, engines dying mid-flight as they spun helplessly through the atmosphere. Panic spread through the fleet. He heard the officers on the ground shouting orders, trying to control the chaos. Troops sprinted through the lanes with handheld trackers, trying to reacquire his signal. They were desperate now. Whatever conflict was rising in the sky, they believed he was the center of it, even if he didn't understand why. He took a breath and hugged the tablet closer, trying to steady himself. The message inside it still lingered in his mind. The final phase is starting, and you're the only one left who can finish it. That single line pushed him forward as he ran deeper into the maze, searching for any path that didn't lead straight into Directorate fire. But the pale beam above him changed. It widened, brightened. And then, for the first time, he felt something, not heat, not pressure, but a strange pull. A tug deep in his chest, like gravity had shifted its attention to him alone. His breath hitched, his footsteps faltered. He tried to move out of the beam, but his legs felt heavier, slower, as if the air had thickened around him. The first machine wasn't marking him anymore. It was calling him. The second machine noticed. Its red lights narrowed like pupils locking onto prey. It turned sharply, ignoring the Directorate fleet entirely, and focused on him. The humming in the air became sharper, faster, building toward a pitch that made the ground tremble. The first machine responded immediately, releasing another pulse of soft blue light that clashed mid-air with the red glow spreading across the sky. The two energies collided in a swirl of colors that flickered violently, sending shockwaves across the clouds. He didn't know what the machines were fighting over. The tablet gave no answers. His past gave no clues. All he knew was that both forces wanted him, one calmly, one aggressively, and the Directorate wanted him even more. He pushed forward just as a squad of soldiers rounded the corner. Their eyes widened when they saw him, and their rifles snapped up. He dropped low, rolling behind a broken loader as energy blasts cracked against the metal. Sparks showered down. A crate exploded nearby, scattering debris across the path. He gritted his teeth and waited for a pause, then sprinted toward a stack of containers, keeping low and moving faster than the soldiers expected. He heard them yelling behind him, "Do not lose him, not now!" But the ground rumbled again. The second machine descended lower, red light intensifying. Its shadow swallowed half the shipping yard. The air pressure shifted so suddenly that loose containers toppled, slamming into the ground like thunder. Civilians screamed. Soldiers scattered. The forgotten champion stumbled, catching himself on a railing as the wind surged around him. The first machine descended too, but slower, its beam still fixed on him, almost protective. The clash between the two lights grew more intense, painting the sky with colors the city had never seen. For a moment, everything froze. The fleet, the soldiers, the civilians. Even the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Then a voice crackled from the tablet, faint, broken, barely a whisper. "Don't let it take you." His blood went cold. The second machine shifted, and a section on its underside opened, revealing a swirling core of red energy that pulsed like an open eye. The pull in the air grew stronger, dragging loose debris upward, dragging dust, dragging metal. Dragging him. He dug his heels into the ground, grabbing onto a rail to stay anchored. The wind whipped around him. His jacket snapped like a flag. His arms burned as the pull intensified, threatening to rip him off the ground. Above him, the first machine responded with a desperate surge of blue power, releasing a massive pulse that shook the atmosphere itself. The red core quivered, destabilized, but only for a moment. Because then the Directorate fleet made their choice. They aimed every cannon, every missile, every weapon at the exact center of the conflict. He looked up, breath shaky, heart hammering, caught between two ancient forces fighting over a past he barely remembered, and a fleet ready to erase him to end the chaos. The sky lit up with 1,000 charging weapons, and the world held still, waiting for the inevitable explosion that would change everything. The sky erupted before the first shot could land. A blinding silver arc tore straight through the clouds, cutting across the firing path of the entire Directorate fleet. The light was so sharp, so sudden, that everyone on the ground flinched and shielded their eyes. Even the soldiers who had been aiming directly at him staggered back, confused by the shockwave that rippled through the air. The silver arc wasn't an attack. It wasn't a shield or a flare. It was a doorway. A vertical slit of shimmering light hung open in midair, like reality itself had cracked. Inside it, shapes flickered, distorted, shifting, impossible to make out. The pull dragging him upward weakened instantly. The red machine shuddered, and the blue-lit machine drifted backward as if making room. Everything in the sky seemed to hesitate, as though none of them had expected this. A third force had entered the battlefield. He held onto the railing, breathing hard, dust swirling around him. The silver doorway hummed with a strange resonance, different from either machine. It didn't vibrate like a weapon. It didn't pulse like something built for war. It felt intentional, controlled, and deeply familiar in a way he couldn't explain. The Directorate fleet broke formation yet again. Commanders shouted across comms, demanding scans, demanding explanations, demanding someone identify the anomaly. But every scanner overloaded, every detection system failed. The doorway wasn't something their technology understood. He stared at it, feeling a prickling sensation run along his spine. Something inside that light was calling him quietly, unlike the machines, but unmistakably calling. Then the impossible happened. A silhouette stepped out. A human figure, walked through the doorway as if stepping across a threshold in an ordinary hallway. The light parted around them, folding like cloth before sealing shut behind their back. The battlefield fell silent. Even the red machine froze mid-movement. The figure stood tall, breathing calmly, scanning the scene. Their uniform was older than anything used in the current era. The patterns and insignia were unmistakable. His chest tightened as recognition hit him like a silent blow. The silhouette wore the same symbol etched into his tablet. An Earth unit insignia, his unit insignia, someone from his past. Someone he believed long dead, was standing in front of him. The ground trembled again as the red machine's core flared dangerously bright, reacting to the arrival of the figure. The blue-lit machine released a deep tone like a warning. The air thickened with tension. The figure raised their hand not toward the machines, but toward him. "You weren't supposed to be alone this long," they said quietly, voice steady despite the storm around them. His grip on the railing slipped, his legs felt weak. He tried to speak, but no words came out. The figure continued walking toward him, each step measured. "We searched for you. We tried to reach you. But the Directorate erased more than you think." The soldiers nearby exchanged fearful glances. Their scanners kept glitching, unable to lock onto the newcomer. One soldier stepped forward uncertainly, pointing a weapon. "Identify yourself." The figure didn't even look at him. "You must leave this place now." The ground shook violently as the red machine released a pulse of energy, angrier than before. The waves slammed into the shipping lanes, flipping crates and containers like toys. People screamed as debris flew across the yards. The forgotten champion shielded his face with his arm as the blast tore through the area, heat and wind ripping past him. The figure reached him, grabbing his shoulder before he could fall. "You need to move. That machine is not here for the Directorate, it's here for you." He steadied himself, still stunned. "Why?" he managed to ask. The figure shook their head. "Because the program didn't end when you thought it did. Parts of it evolved without us. Parts of it broke." Before he could ask more, the silver doorway flickered open again behind them, this time unstable, as if strained by the chaos. Blue sparks shot from its edges. The figure looked back at it with urgency. "We don't have long. If that machine locks onto you again, nothing in this sector survives." The Directorate fleet must have realized how bad the situation had become. Dozens of ships repositioned, aiming not at him now, but at the red machine. A commander's voice echoed across comms. "All forces, target the hostile unknown. Full barrage, prepare to fire." The figure's eyes widened. "No, if they fire now, the blast will destabilize everything. This moon won't withstand it." He looked at the sky. Hundreds of cannons glowed with rising energy. He looked at the red machine, charging again. He looked at the silver doorway, flickering violently. Every option led to destruction. The figure gripped his arm tightly. "Whatever happens next, you have to remember what they took from you. Your memories were never lost, only locked. And the key is right here." They tapped the Earth tablet. The device lit up again brighter than ever before, symbols racing across the surface in rapid patterns he had forgotten how to read. In the sky, the red machine roared. The blue machine surged forward to block it. The fleet completed its firing cycle. The light on the tablet turned blinding white. And at that exact moment, a fourth pulse, one he had never felt before, spread across the battlefield like a shockwave of pure memory. He gasped as visions slammed into him, too fast to process. Faces, voices, missions, a hidden facility, a secret oath. A truth the Directorate would kill entire star systems to bury. His knees buckled, the world spun. And just as the fleet unleashed its full power, he finally remembered the one thing they never wanted him to recall: why the machines were made, and what they were designed to protect from him. The world around him twisted as the memories snapped into place, clear, sharp, and overwhelming. He staggered but didn't fall, his mind struggling to separate the present from the flood of the past. The silver doorway, the red machine, the blue machine, the Directorate fleet, all of it blurred for a heartbeat as another image came into focus. A room, cold, silent, lit by the same soft blue patterns swirling around the first machine. He remembered standing there with others beside him, people he trusted more than family. They were humanity's last experiment, a final attempt to design defenders with instincts fast enough to match future enemies. Their minds were conditioned to survive impossible odds. Their bodies adapted to extreme environments. Their purpose was simple: protect humanity's frontier at any cost. But something in the program fractured. One part of the project, the red-coated division, decided humans themselves were the threat. They believed the only way to save the frontier was to destroy the ones who created it. That division built machines meant to contain or eliminate human units like his. Machines programmed to correct what they saw as a mistake. He had been one of the last prototypes. When the Directorate attacked Earth and the frontier fell, the surviving machines scattered. The blue-coated machines hid, preserving the final living members they were sworn to defend. The red-coated machines hunted them, determined to erase the project entirely. And in the chaos, he was wounded and put into a stasis escape pod, the only way the Blue Division could keep him safe. The others didn't survive long enough to escape. The Directorate found his pod later, wiped his memory, and buried the entire program. They feared humans who could think and fight this fast. They feared what the machines represented. They feared the truth of how close humanity had come to creating something unstoppable. And now the truth was awake again. The sky exploded as the Directorate fleet fired every weapon they had. But before the blasts reached him, the blue machine surged downward with impossible speed, placing itself between him and the incoming barrage. The explosion hit its hull in a storm of fire and shockwaves. The ground shook violently as the machine absorbed the impact, shielding him completely. The red machine shrieked, a sound like tearing metal and distorted alarms, furious that its target remained alive. It lunged downward, core blazing, aiming to finish its mission. The shockwave of its descent cracked the pavement around him and sent soldiers flying. The figure from the doorway grabbed his arm again. "You remember now," they said, steady despite the chaos. "You know what you were built for." He took a breath, grounding himself, the last pieces of memory snapping into place. "I wasn't built to destroy anything," the figure nodded. "You were built to stop what they started." The red machine unleashed a beam of crimson energy aimed directly at him. The blue machine recovered just in time, shifting to intercept, but something inside him stirred before it could reach him. A pulse radiated from his chest, invisible yet powerful enough to make the air quiver. The red beam twisted mid-flight, bending away from him as if repelled by an unseen force. The forgotten champion straightened, steady now. The memories had unlocked not just knowledge, but instinct, deep programmed responses designed for a moment exactly like this. The silver doorway pulsed behind him, stabilizing as if reacting to his awakening. The red machine realized too late. He wasn't the experiment. He was the override. The blue machine responded instantly, opening its core in a wide arc of white-blue light. It wasn't an attack, it was a signal, the final signal of the old program. The silver doorway echoed it with a shimmer. Energy linked the doorway and the blue machine, forming a twisting column of light around him. The figure stepped back, giving him space. "You're the only one who can shut it down," they said. The red machine roared again, charging its core for one final, devastating strike, one powerful enough to wipe out the entire moon. He stepped into the beam of light. His hands rose instinctively, palms open, and the battlefield fell silent. The red machine's core burst with wild, uncontrolled energy as it collided with the override signal pouring from him. Light rippled outward in waves, brighter than any explosion yet strangely quiet. The red machine thrashed, its lights flickering, its systems failing under the weight of the override it had once been designed to fear. Then, in a single blinding flash, the red machine collapsed in on itself, reduced to drifting fragments that glowed dimly before fading into the sky. The Directorate fleet stopped firing immediately. Their engines dimmed, their weapons cooled. They had no idea what had just happened, only that the threat was gone, and the human they hunted had done the impossible. The blue machine lowered itself slowly, its lights softening. The silver doorway flickered with a calming glow. The figure approached him again. "It's over," they said quietly. "You've stopped the last of them." He nodded, breathing slowly, the weight of everything settling in his chest. But then the figure looked past him, toward the horizon, where the sky had begun to distort again. "That was the last machine," they whispered. But not the last secret. A new shape appeared far beyond the city, rising through the clouds far larger than any of the machines before it, silent and unmarked. His heart tightened. The final twist he didn't expect hit him all at once. This one wasn't from Earth's program. It wasn't from the Directorate. It wasn't from any known part of the galaxy. Something else had heard the signals. Something else had awakened. And it was coming. For a moment, the entire battlefield stood still, as if even the air was waiting to see what would happen next. The giant shape on the horizon kept rising through the clouds, its surface shifting with muted colors that didn't match any known technology. The forgotten champion braced himself, expecting another hostile machine or another ancient enemy awakened by the signals. But as the shape drew closer, the sky didn't fill with tension. It softened, as if something calm and deliberate was approaching instead of something built for destruction. The blue machine beside him released one last gentle tone, almost like a farewell. Its lights dimmed slowly, its core closing as if its purpose had finally ended. It settled on the ground with surprising grace, no longer hovering, simply resting like an old guardian laying down its shield. The figure from the silver doorway watched quietly, not speaking, as if they knew the machine's time had run out. "It used the last of its power," they said softly. "Protecting you was the final command it held." He placed his hand on the machine's cool surface, feeling a strange heaviness in his chest. He had no memory of forming a bond with it before the war, but something deep in him recognized it as more than a tool. It had been part of his life before everything was erased, part of the program meant to keep humans alive when the rest of the galaxy turned too uncertain. But now its duty was done. The giant shape in the sky drifted closer, revealing its true form. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't built for war. It was a vessel smooth and reflective, moving with quiet certainty. As it passed above the ruins of the shipping yard, it didn't prepare an attack or scan aggressively. Instead, it released a soft resonance, like a deep breath spreading across the land. The figure stepped forward. "It's not here for violence," they murmured. "It's responding to the same signals we did. But this one isn't from our past. It's from beyond the frontier we once protected." The forgotten champion felt the tension he didn't realize he'd been carrying begin to ease. For the first time since the Directorate fleet arrived, he sensed no threat in the air. The soldiers nearby slowly lowered their weapons, unsure but exhausted. Civilians peeked from behind broken structures, stunned by the silence replacing the chaos. The vessel lowered until it hovered only a few meters from the ground. A panel on its underside opened, revealing a soft white glow. No figures emerged, no weapons activated. Just a quiet invitation, as if offering a bridge rather than a command. He looked at the figure who had come from the silver doorway. "Did you know this would happen?" The figure shook their head. "We only knew the signals would wake the machines. Not this. Whatever this vessel is, it came because the override pulse reached far beyond this sector." After a pause, they added, "Maybe humanity wasn't as forgotten as we thought." A slow realization settled into him. The message on the tablet, the protective machine, the broken program, all of it pointed toward one truth. He wasn't meant to stay hidden forever. His survival, though accidental at first, had become a piece of a larger chain, one that connected old wars, forgotten installations, and now something far beyond the old frontier lines. The vessel opened a path of light toward him. It wasn't pulling him or forcing him. It was simply waiting. The figure stepped closer. "You have a choice now. You can leave with it, or stay and rebuild what was lost." He looked around at the battered shipping yard, the damaged warships, the stunned soldiers who had once hunted him. The Directorate had seen what he truly was now, but they weren't advancing. They weren't arresting him. They were staring upward, just as confused and humbled as everyone else. He knelt beside the blue machine, touching its surface one last time. "We fought so hard to survive," he whispered, more to himself than anyone. "Maybe now we learn something new." When he stood, he took a quiet breath and stepped toward the vessel's light. Not to flee, not to chase another war, but to understand what waited beyond the borders he once defended. The figure nodded, satisfied. Whatever lies out there, remember one thing: you were never a weapon. You were the reminder of what humanity can become when it refuses to disappear. The ground shimmered as he entered the light. It wrapped around him gently, lifting him upward. The vessel accepted him without resistance, its glow pulsing softly like a heartbeat. As it rose into the sky, the silver doorway closed behind him, its purpose fulfilled. Below, the troops finally lowered their rifles. The Directorate fleet powered down its weapons. Civilians emerged from hiding. The entire moon watched as the vessel climbed higher, carrying with it the last living fragment of an abandoned program and the first glimmer of a new beginning. Far above the clouds, the vessel turned toward the stars, its engines humming with quiet purpose. He felt the weight of his past fade into something lighter, something open. And for the first time in a long time, the forgotten champion didn't feel hunted. He felt free. The stars stretched ahead, endless and waiting, as the vessel carried him toward a horizon no human had crossed before.